For the most recent appearance of Godzilla on the big screen, another independent horror director was brought on board to bring two iconic monsters together in epic battle: Adam Wingard. He would use his extensive knowledge of classic action cinema to pit the world's most famous kaiju against one another, in a sci-fi action spectacle that is equal parts Showa-era fun, Heisei-era fantasy, and Millennium-era colorful flashiness. For the first time in almost 60 years, Godzilla and Kong would clash once more in 2021's Godzilla vs. Kong.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. My name is Connor Dunham and I am here along with Chris, and we are both very excited today as we are doing Godzilla vs. Kong. And this film came out in 2021 and I remember all the hype that surrounded this, and I was almost kind of like a nervous wreck with this film because it's like, all right, well, Godzilla in the last one got the title King of the Monsters officially, and the only way for Kong to become King Kong is to beat Godzilla. So I was thinking of all the different scenarios in my head, like how are they going to make Kong beat Godzilla, or how's Godzilla going to beat Kong? And my my daughter's mom and we bought like Team Godzilla and Team Kong T-shirts and went and seen this in theaters, and it was just a blast. We went and seen the King of the Monsters in theaters as well, but we had a little grudge match going between us here with this one because she was definitely Team Kong just because he's a little more on the sentimental side with the humans, but we had a blast, and I was, of course, Team Godzilla all the way. So, Chris, what I know you said you seen this a personal record amount of times. So, what do you remember about this film?
Yeah, I was a theater manager at the time, and coming out of the lockdowns, there was not a lot of content for theaters to kind of stay open, and theaters were at half capacity. Our theater at this time was only open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just very, very limited in a lot of big ways. And this was the first big movie to actually get audiences back out to the theaters. And because I was a theater manager and I could see the movie before and after work and all this other stuff. Yeah, I saw it 10 times. I was like, I want my record to be like a nice even big number. So I was like, yeah, I saw it 10 times in theaters. I loved the movie, obviously. I was nervous a lot before it came out too, because I'm a Godzilla guy, and it was like a childhood wish of mine for a King Kong versus Godzilla remake to happen and for Godzilla to win. That was like something I wanted to see ever since I was a little kid. I was nervous too because, like you said, they kind of established Godzilla as king of the monsters, and it's like, oh, is he gonna become King Kong by beating Godzilla? The director said he wanted a clear winner, and then there was an interview where Gareth Edwards, the director of Godzilla 14, had talked about how when he was talking to Legendary, the production company behind this movie, that they were saying things like they wanted it to be an underdog story and things like that. I'm like, oh gosh, like they want it to be like Kong's movie, or and so it was just a lot of things that made me nervous. And there's no like book or source material. There's no thing that says they have to do it a certain way. So me and my younger brother went to see it opening night in a as packed of a crowd as the theater capacity would allow, and it was you were just on the edge of your seat during the fight scenes because you legitimately didn't know exactly what was going to happen. It was like watching an old show like Animal Face Off as a kid, or Deadliest Warrior, where it's like you knew that one side was going to win. And but it was incredible to see. I love the movie front to back. It was just kind of the perfect theater experience at the perfect time, you know. So I love it to death in a way that's not rational, probably.
Yeah, it was absolutely a blast in theaters. I took my mom as well. She went with us, and she doesn't keep up with, Godzilla or Kong films. She's seen the recent legendary ones that have come out, but I had posted the trailer on Facebook, years ago when it came out, and she commented and she's like, "You're taking me, like you don't have a choice." And I was like, "Oh, well, all right. Well, guess I'll grab you a ticket too." Like, and she had fun. I mean, I only seen it in theaters once. I wish I would have went back for more, but with it being on HBO Max, that I came home and I was watching this movie like every other day, or skipping to the fight scenes every other day, certain parts of the movie. So it's
Yeah, we
definitely high up on my list, and it's definitely a fun film.
yeah, we had HBO Max, but I was like, I hated the idea that they were putting out movies on the same day as theaters, because I was thinking to myself, I said, well, this is going to absolutely kill the theater industry. And I was a manager at a theater at the time. I was like, these Hollywood a-holes are going to ruin the industry and keep everyone from coming to the theaters because they're putting everything on streaming. You know, if you put it on streaming, you're basically begging people to not see it in theaters. So I was so concerned about the movie being a flop. I was concerned about my own industry not surviving. So I was like, I'm actually paying to support this movie, and I was buying tickets to it. Not every single show, but I bought tickets to a lot of shows. I was like, I want to try and like make this movie a hit and try and keep the industry alive. I felt like so personally responsible for that. So yeah, I actively did not watch it on HBO Max, even though I did have HBO Max.
Yeah, and what's nice is, the 2019's, Godzilla King of the Monsters, it didn't do very well in theaters. I mean, a lot of it had to do with critics and whatnot, but it it gained its like cult following, I guess you could say, or it gained a lot of respect in the Blu-ray sales, and after it got out of theaters. But Godzilla vs Kong just came out with a bang right away, and like you said, it
Yeah,
almost saved the theater industry during the COVID years.
yeah, and if Godzilla versus Kong was already not sort of greenlit and set to happen when Godzilla King of the Monsters came out, Godzilla versus Kong probably would not have been greenlit or might not have been made. If it was all dependent on we'll see how good King of the Monsters does before we decide if we make another one. If that had been how it was, then the performance of King of the Monsters might have ended things prematurely, but they were kind of already committed. They were already pushing towards this Godzilla versus Kong movie. They'd had it all kind of set up and ready to go. It was originally supposed to come out the very next year after King of the Monsters. But then, uh, the lockdowns and all of that, and then they reworked the movie a little bit, and all of those things happened, and so it came out, and this was that moment where the director also said, he said, we don't really talk about ideas for sequels or this or that or the other, but he said, if people want more of this franchise, they're really going to have to come forward and show that they support this movie and want more, and it was the most politically correct way of saying like, "Hey, this movie needs to be a hit, or it's the end of the road." And the movie was a big hit, made almost $500 million in the middle of like as the first big movie out with theaters kind of just coming back, in terms of. But like I said, some theaters were still 50 capacity, only open on weekends. It was so limited, but the film still made nearly $500 million, which is huge. So definitely over indexed for what it did. I'm sure the HBO Max streaming numbers were big, so they greenlit a sequel for a reason. So it was nice to see this movie reach its success.
Absolutely, and I'll go into a little of the background on the film. Godzilla vs. Kong is a 2021 American monster film directed by Adam Wingard, produced by Legendary Pictures, and distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures. It is a sequel to 2017's Kong Skull Island and, again, 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. It is the fourth film in the MonsterVerse, and it is also the 36th film in the Godzilla franchise and the 12th film in the Kong franchise. and then only the fourth Godzilla film to be completely produced by an American film studio. The film stars Alexander Skarsgård, Millie Bobby Brown, Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, Shun Oguri, Isa Gonzalez, Julianne Dennison, Lance Reddick, Kyle Chandler, and Damian Bashir. The project was announced in October 2015 when Legendary Pictures declared plans for a shared cinematic universe between Godzilla and Kong. The film's writers' room was assembled in March 2017, and the director was and Wingard, however you want
I
to
think it's
pronounce that.
I I think it's Wingard.
I'll say I've said it. I've pronounced it talking to people like six different ways, so I didn't know what was correct.
Yeah, I believe me, I don't have like scientific knowledge or anything, but I thought it was Wingard.
All right, we'll just go with that. And Adam Wingard was announced as a director in May 2017. Principal photography began in November 2018 in Hawaii, Australia, and Hong Kong, and wrapped in April 2019. After being delayed from a November 2020 release date due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Godzilla vs. Kong was officially theatrically released internationally on March 24th, 2021, and in the United States on March 31st, where it was also released on HBO Max simultaneously. And the film received generally positive reviews from critics with praise for the visual effects and action sequences, but criticism once again towards the human characters. So critics can bite me on that because I've liked the characters in all these films.
Yeah, and I actually think that of the MonsterVerse films, I actually think that the way the humans are handled in this movie, I would probably say it's the best in terms of it's not a very large ensemble cast. You know, it's a focused uh set of characters, and there's sort of an A plot and a B plot in terms of the human cast, and they have very clear sort of connections to what's going on with the monsters. So even when, this movie has a ton of monster screen time, which is great, but even when there isn't, the humans are completely wrapped up in pushing the plot forward and sort of connecting to talking about the monsters. So it's very, it just feels, it never feels like we're on monster time or on human time, or we're on, or we're looking at the monsters or getting the monsters, or we're just dealing with the humans and all of their human stuff. Like it all feels wrapped up in a really good way. The performances are all good. I really do like the human cast in this movie.
Yeah, and like you said, even when the monsters aren't on screen, they're always talking about, how is Kong gonna do this? How is Kong gonna do that? We have to avoid Godzilla. If they meet, it's going to be this and it's going to be an all-out war, and now he may have family down there, and when they try to get him into Hollow Earth and whatnot, they're all, it seems like, because the monster screen time, I believe altogether, Kong, Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, all that, I think it's somewhere around like 40 minutes or so, out of an hour and 53-minute movie with credits. So I
Yeah.
mean that's a very good portion. And then when they're not on film, like I said, they're constantly bringing up where Godzilla is or how to get Kong to do this and whatnot. So it runs and flows together very well, and it seems like a very quick paced movie for almost being 2 hours.
Yeah, and it's the shortest of the MonsterVerse movies. And someone pointed out that if you look at the stats, that apparently Godzilla has more screen time in the Versus movie, where everyone complains that Kong was the focus. Godzilla has more screen time than he does in either of his two solo movies. So, that says something.
Yeah, for sure. So we can get to the fun stuff. We'll get into a trailer of Godzilla vs. Kong, get into a plot synopsis, and then come back with some fun facts, some of those numbers that you were digging into, and go on from there.
I got to tell you, one of my favorite. I walked into the auditorium when we were playing the trailer in front of a crowd, and there was obviously some people that had no idea what movies were coming out or getting made. There was like a normie guy, and so the trailer starts and it shows Kong, and you hear him. He goes, oh, he goes. new King Kong movie. And then like it starts to ramp up where it's like something's coming, and he goes, like, he's like, what? And then he goes, what is that? And then like the character in the trailer says, it's Godzilla. And he goes, huh? Like he was like completely along for the ride of the trailer, and it was just awesome to be standing there.
Had no idea it was coming out, but
Yeah,
was
yeah,
instantly
it was
excited.
everything he saw. It was like taking him on the journey. He had no idea this movie was getting made. It took him by complete surprise, and he was just like on board. It was so much fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just a genuine reaction.
It was great.
This is our only chance. We have to take it. We need Kong. The world needs him to stop what's coming. And this child, she's the only one he'll communicate with.
I knew that they had a bond. She had nowhere to go, so I made a promise to protect her. And I think that in some way, Kong did the same. It's Godzilla.
These are dangerous times.
Godzilla's out there and he's hurting people, and we don't know why.
There's something provoking him that we're not seeing here.
I'm of the same opinion.
The myths are real. There was a war. And they're the last ones standing.
I keep reaching for greatness because I'm built from it.
Who bows to who?
Nobody gonna stop for me.
Kong bows to no one.
5 years after the extraterrestrial King Ghidorah awakened the monstrous titans around the world and was defeated by Godzilla, Kong is monitored by Monarch within a giant dome on Skull Island, which has been taken over by the storm that previously kept it hidden from the world. Kong is visited by Gia, the last Iwi native and young adopted daughter of Kong expert Eileen Andrews. Gia is deaf and communicates with Kong via sign language. Apex Cybernetics employee and Titan Conspiracy podcast host Bernie Hayes extracts data suggesting sinister activities at Apex's Pensacola facility. Godzilla attacks the facility and Bernie stumbles on a massive device during the rampage. Madison Russell, a listener to Bernie's podcast, enlists Josh Valentine to investigate Godzilla's attacks. Apex CEO Walter Simmons recruits former Monarch scientist and Hollow Earth theorist Nathan Lind to guide a search for a power source into the Hollow Earth, the Titan's home. Lind is hesitant as his brother died in an expedition to the Hollow Earth due to a strong reverse gravitational effect. He agrees when Walter reveals that Apex has developed Heaves, specialized craft able to withstand the gravity field. Lind convinces Andrews to let Kong guide them via an outpost in Antarctica. Lind, Andrews, and an Apex team led by Walter's daughter, Maya, board a barge escorted by the U.S. Navy, carrying a sedated and restrained Kong. Godzilla attacks the convoy and defeats Kong, then retreats after the ships trick him into thinking they are destroyed. Kong is airlifted to the Hollow Earth entrance, and the team follows him into the tunnel in the Heaves. Bernie joins Madison and Josh in their investigation. They sneak into the wrecked Apex base, discover a secret underground facility, and become locked into a Hyperloop transport to Apex's Hong Kong headquarters, where they find a test of Mechagodzilla. It is telepathically controlled by Rin Serizawa, the son of the late Ishiro Serizawa, via neural networks from the severed head of Ghidorah. Walter intends to harness the Hollow Earth's energy to overcome Mechagodzilla's power supply limitations. Inside the Hollow Earth, Kong and the team find an ecosystem similar to Skull Island. In his species' ancestral throne room, they find the remains of an ancient war with Godzilla's kind, and a glowing axe made from another Godzilla's dorsal plates. Identifying the power source, the Apex team sends its signature back to their Hong Kong base despite Andrew's protests. Attracted by Mechagodzilla's activation, Godzilla arrives in Hong Kong. Godzilla drills a shaft directly to the throne room with his atomic breath. Maya and the Apex team's heave is crushed by Kong. Kong, Andrews, Gia, and Lind ascend to Hong Kong, where Kong engages Godzilla in a final battle in which Godzilla emerges victorious, leaving Kong in a dying state. Madison, Josh, and Bernie are caught by security and taken to Walter, who orders Ren to activate Mechagodzilla, which is then possessed by Ghidorah's consciousness. It kills Walter, electrocutes Ren, and overwhelms Godzilla. Lind revives Kong by detonating the heave on his chest, acting like a defibrillator. Gia convinces Kong to help Godzilla. As Mechagodzilla overpowers both Titans, Josh momentarily short-circuits Mechagodzilla's controls with Bernie's flask of liquor on its control panel. Godzilla charges Kong's axe with his atomic breath, allowing Kong to destroy Mechagodzilla. Madison, Bernie, and Josh reunite with Madison's father Mark, while Godzilla and Kong acknowledge each other and go their separate ways. Sometime later, Monarch establishes an observation post in the Hollow Earth where Kong now rules.
All right, let's get into some fun facts here on Godzilla vs. Kong. This is something you stated earlier. This was my first one. It's with a runtime of 113 minutes, Godzilla vs. Kong is the shortest entry in the MonsterVerse, as well as the shortest American Godzilla film.
Oh no, I was gonna say I like that. Honestly, I think it's awesome. I think that giant monster movies are best if they kind of keep under that 2 hour mark. I think some people like to think of them too much as like a big movie like Transformers or Independence Day that's gonna be like 2.5 hours, and it's like no, these are creature features, man. These are like 100-minute, 110-minute. That's where they need to live.
Mechagodzilla is the final monster of Toho's Big Five to appear in a MonsterVerse film, the others being, of course, Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, and King Ghidorah.
Yeah, no, I always liked that. I always liked they were kind of moving through the heaviest hitters, you know, that the MonsterVerse is sort of this kind of abbreviated, modernized version of the Showa era. You know, you get Godzilla, you get Kong, then you get Mothra, Rodan, Ghidorah, and then you just leapfrog to Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, and we'll get into it later, but a pretty badass version of himself at that.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the second film in which King Kong fights a mechanized version of a monster. The first being King Kong Escapes, where he fought his own mechanical duplicate, Mechanicong, who inspired the creation of Mechagodzilla later on.
Yeah, which is wild because it's a little funny that King Kong is one of the things that inspired and led to Godzilla, and then Mechanicong predates Mechagodzilla. But I would say globally that Godzilla and Mechagodzilla are much more like recognized and famous, and certainly have been in way more movies than King Kong and Mechanicong. It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anyone who's seen King Kong Escapes knows that's
yeah,
I mean,
that's an acquired taste of a movie, in my opinion.
I'm glad you worded it that way. Mine was going to be a little bit more mean, but it's definitely an acquired taste.
Kong. That's all I think about when I think of that movie. That lady yelling Kong over and over again.
Yeah. This is another fun fact that goes back to the King Kong franchise. It's the Denham University of Theoretical Science is named after Carl Denham from the original King Kong film.
Yeah, I always thought that was a nice touch, you know.
Yeah, and this my next fun fact goes along with, some fun for the fans as well. Mechagodzilla emerges from a mountain, engages in a beam lock with Godzilla, and is defeated by Godzilla and another monster by having its head torn off, much like its Showa counterpart. But in this telling, however, Kong tears off the machine's head instead of Godzilla. So all of those, are little fun fan callbacks.
Yeah, in 1974, Godzilla teamed up with a furry boy, King Caesar, and then in 2021 he teams up with another furry boy, but it's King Kong.
Yeah, and then here's another one. Mechagodzilla being built using King Ghidorah's severed head as a neural interface is reminiscent of the film Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 or Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla from 1993 in the Heisei era, where it was constructed using technology salvaged from Mecha King Ghidorah's severed mechanical middle head in that film.
Yeah, yeah, kind of a fun nod to Godzilla, you know, to the concept of Mecha King Ghidorah by using the Ghidorah skull as a basis, you know. I like stuff like that. You know, these are sci-fi movies that are very not super realistic, and they're very sort of hyper real and play by their own sci-fi rules. But even still, it makes Mechagodzilla a bit more feasible if it's fueled by a by the sort of neural link to the King Ghidorah skull instead of just human technology.
Yeah, and I like that. It was a nice connection to the last film because in King of the Monsters, you see in the post credits scene, the Ghidorah head that they somehow pulled out of the water, and you're like, all right, well, what are they going to do with this thing? And it's nice that it was brought back and actually shown what it was used for in this film because a lot of films will do something in a post credits scene and it's not explained in a following film. So I
Yeah,
like that connection.
yeah, it was a real good plot point to follow up on, and not in like some big, wild, crazy way, but just in kind of a cool, minor way. You know, I liked that a lot.
Even though some of us were hoping for Mecha King Ghidorah, but that might have been a little more difficult to pull off.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, you never know, but I mean, if given the choice between one or the other, I'm like, you kind of got to go with Mechagodzilla, right? I mean, that's the icon, that's the original, you know.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's him or Ghidorah for your final boss, and
And
they
also,
chose
if you're
Mechagodzilla.
yeah, and you don't want to do Ghidorah as the villain and then immediately turn around and do Mecha King Ghidorah as the next villain. I think they wanted a new thing for the MonsterVerse.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Keep the interest going. As in many of his films, Kong is transported from his island by boat, and then Kong being airlifted is reminiscent of scenes in both King Kong vs. Godzilla and King Kong Escapes. So another little nod to the fans if they recognize that.
Yeah, which it's funny, you know, you would think, you know, before seeing Godzilla versus Kong, you would think like, ah, like this isn't going to be, you know, have the kind of dated aspects of the 60s. Like you're not going to see Kong getting a balloon ride or anything like that. And then you see the movie and it's like they do it and it's like, yeah, you know what? It kind of works. Like that's actually kind of neat. Like this movie's kind of like fully immersed in this kind of it's just like the Showa era and that you begin where it's the real world with a monster or two thrown in it. But then by the end of it, this is a completely fantasy monster world full of wild creatures and technology, and you kind of just buy into this, you know, it's a genre onto itself. It's sort of like going from Iron Man and then you 10 years later you're watching Infinity War, and every other character is a superhero with a different magical power or supernatural ability, and you just kind of roll with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was fun to see that because as soon as they got attacked at sea, I was just like, all right, well, something has to be coming. That's a callback. As fans, we know, and it's like, how are they going to do it? And they do it with the helicopters and the netting, and I was like, all right, I can live with that. That might be possible.
Hmm. Hmm.
Godzilla attacking Kong at sea while he is being transported is reminiscent of his attack on Mothra's egg in Godzilla vs. Mothra from
Oh,
1992.
that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. I wasn't really thinking about that. I
I
can't.
did not
Yeah,
think about that one time
yeah,
in theater.
yeah. I never made that connection because him being transported at sea, that's kind of done in the original King Kong versus Godzilla. But I mean, yeah, kind of battle with the barges. Yeah, when you said Mothra's egg, I was like, what reference to Mothra's egg? My mind went in completely a different direction. I spaced out. Oh wow, that's interesting. That's interesting.
No, you are fine.
That battle
This
at sea
this
is awesome. That battle at sea
yeah,
is amazing.
yeah, absolutely. We will get to that here in a short while, but this is the one fans wanted to see right here, and it's during Godzilla and Kong's Hong Kong battle. Kong shoves the handle of his axe down Godzilla's throat, referencing the famous scene from King Kong versus Godzilla, where Kong shoves a tree down Godzilla's throat, and and then he's also revived by electricity at the end of both films.
Yeah, which is that's a little bit more of a more subtle nod, but yeah, the eat your vegetables scene. My younger brother, he was a teenager, and it would have been a task to try and get him to watch the whole original King Kong versus Godzilla movie. But we did watch all of the fight scenes on YouTube before we saw Godzilla versus Kong, just so he had like a basis for what the OG was. So he was able to notice the things like the balloons, like the eat your vegetable scene, like even he was able to appreciate those nods and callbacks.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I figured they weren't going to use a tree for this one, but once
Yeah,
you seen in the trailers and stuff the axe, you didn't really know what it was quite yet. But
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah. You know that the tree's not the right scale, but using the axe as a nod to that, I'm like, okay, that's really cool. That's nice. You didn't immediately assume that was what was going to happen, but they did it. It's a very good moment.
no, and I've seen videos where the of theaters just going bananas when that part of the fight in Hong Kong happens, and it warms your heart a little bit, makes you
Yeah.
happy to be a Godzilla nerd.
Oh, 100%. This stands as my favorite in theater experience. The crowd that we had opening night was completely in sync with the movie, and everyone was just fully on board. And you clearly had some folks in the audience that were very pro Kong or pro Godzilla, and it was the best energy I think I've ever seen a movie with.
Oh yeah, I remember going with my daughter's mom, and she looks at me because I must have been tense or something, like rubbing my hands together during the fight scenes, and she's like, "Are you nervous?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't. I know it's only a movie, but yeah, I'm a little nervous here."
Yeah, I was. Oh, I mean, it was one of these things where if they legitimately had Kong defeat Godzilla, as a lifelong Godzilla fan, I would have been like, it could have been the greatest movie of all time. But if Godzilla lost, I would have been like really, really disappointed. And and this was a point in life where not only like the lockdowns were, a tough thing for everyone to go through, I suppose, but also like there were more than a few franchises and movies and stuff that has just really been like kind of letting me down in the last few years. I'm like, man, Star Wars sucks now. I'm like, Marvel's kind of done. Game of Thrones kind of done. I'm like, a lot of these things are kind of like terrible now. And I was like, they can't. I'm like, don't freaking ruin Godzilla versus Kong. Don't like have Godzilla get completely stomped by Kong. Like, I was like, please, whatever forces that control the fate of cinema, don't let this happen. And so there was a lot on the line for me as a movie fan.
Yeah, I was stressing, but come the end of the movie, me and uh me and her had a little in-home bet just for it to raise the stakes a little bit, and Godzilla came out the victor, and I just walked out of the theater with my head high, kind of chuckling, looking at her like, "Ha ha, I won that one, didn't I?"
Yeah. Yeah, it was a fun experience. Like I remember when Kong got his axe and like he raises it up and is roaring and beating on his chest. Like you'd have thought it was like a hype man promo for the main event because everyone was like, "Oh yeah," like they're all celebrating because it's like, "Oh, now it's a more even fight because Kong's got a weapon now." It was just a lot of fun.
Absolutely. My last fun fact for you is Kong attempts to pry open and break both Godzilla and Mechagodzilla's jaws, which was a technique he has performed on many adversaries in his past films, and that is all my fun facts for you on Godzilla vs Kong.
Yeah, which is good. You know, he tries to do like the sort of like the death lock, and he doesn't get it done.
Yeah, it's I mean, if it wasn't for Godzilla's atomic breath, his heat ray, he might have been able to get the job done there. But
Yeah, yeah,
luckily he's got that.
and Godzilla's absolute like tank ability to just take endless punishment and be endlessly durable and never get tired.
Yeah, it was ridiculous in this film. I'll go into some quick numbers so we can go ahead and get to diving into some more scenes and whatnot of this film.
Awesome.
Godzilla vs. Kong had a budget of roughly $155 million and ended up grossing just over $470 million at the box office. It is rated a 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb.
Oh,
A
that's weak.
76 per, oh, it is. It's a 76 on Rotten Tomatoes, which it's still a little low.
Which that is wild that the Rotten Tomatoes is a 76, but the IMDb is a 6 point something. Like, are you guys high? What are you doing? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a 76 on Rotten Tomatoes, a 91% audience score
There
though.
we go. That's the real grade. That's the real grade.
Yeah, based on over 10,000 verified ratings.
Yep, that works. That works. What's the Google? What's the Google rating? There,
84% of Google users
there
liked
you
this
go.
film.
There you go.
There it is.
Yep.
Godzilla is on screen for 11 minutes and 14 seconds, or roughly 10% of the film, with his first full appearance coming in at just under 11 minutes, or 9% into the film.
Nice. Nice.
And those are all my numbers I got for you.
Fantastic. Yeah. I love like this is also kind of the first the attack on the Apex facility is kind of the first. Hi. Hi. Hi.
Are you finally saying hi? For anyone who will be listening to this, clearly my little girl wanted to say hi to Chris. So that's what that was.
That's all right.
We welcome her anytime. Just hopefully when she's a little older and can actually put together sentences.
There we go.
All right, Chris, I'll go in to my favorite character. I'll take character and score, and I'll leave quote and scene for you to go first on this one.
All right, sounds good.
My favorite character in this film, it was pretty easy for me. I chose Gia, and I mean, she was just very easy to follow in this film, and they couldn't have picked like a cuter little girl who can display emotion on her face more perfectly, when she's scared, excited, or when the Hong Kong scene when Kong tries to get back up and go back after Godzilla and just kind of falls down, the look of disappointment on her face. And I mean, she's she's deaf. I mean, the sign language is, to me, is an awesome part of this film. And I just think they hit the nail right on the head with casting her in the spot that they did, and they couldn't have found someone better.
Yeah, I agree. I picked Gia as my favorite character as well. I think and it's not a disrespect to any of the other actors or actresses in the film, but this child gives like this kind of like the most emotional performance in the movie and is like excellent, and is just like the heart and soul of the movie. Her whole dynamic with Kong. I love the sign language aspect because it kind of I'm a big fan of movies that can kind of do more visual storytelling and keep dialogue down where necessary, and a character that does sign language obviously kind of like leans right into that. It's a great cast of characters because I wanted to talk about kind of all the characters overall because like I like that Bernie is like this like Alex Jones style conspiracy theorist, but he's kind of right about everything. Like that's very funny to me. Uh Nathan Lind and Eileen, that they're kind of like straight men. They're kind of like playing, they're not really terribly like dynamic characters, but I kind of like how kind of they're not like larger than life personalities. They're just kind of like normal, like sincere, earnest kind of characters. I like all of the sign language conversations that Eileen has with Gia and stuff like that. Like it's just a lot of fun.
I love the cast of characters in this. They're definitely a fun group, and I seen Brian Tyree in the 2019 Child's Play remake as the detective, and I liked him in that. So seeing him in this was a nice add-on, as I like him as an actor, so that helps.
Yeah, and I was also a fan of Josh, played by Julian Dennison. It's like you would think a character like that would be sort of like the useless comedic relief kind of sidekick for Madison Russell, for Millie Bobby Brown's character, but I like how at so many different turns he's sort of the one, like when they're looking for Bernie, he's the one that bribes the store clerk to find out where Bernie is. Uh, when when it comes down to the climax of the movie and they're trying to figure out how to stall Mechagodzilla or do anything to disrupt it, he's the one that kind of comes up with dousing the control mechanism with alcohol and shorting it out. Like, I like that he's not just the dumb sidekick character, that more often than not he's the one that actually is sort of solving the problem or figuring out what needs to be done. So I kind of dig that.
Yeah, for sure. The only knock I had when it came to the cast was I wish Mark would have been back for a little more in this
Yeah.
instead of just a quick couple scenes.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Kyle Chandler. I think there's something to be said that it's kind of neat when characters can kind of weave in and out of movies, and that it's not necessarily the main character at the center of every story, that a minor character in one story might become more important in the next one, or that a major character in one film might become a sort of secondary character in another one. But I just would have liked to have more in him, because Kyle Chandler is an awesome actor, and I like that character. And I would have liked to just have a little bit more, have him a bit more involved. But it's okay. It's still cool. It's still a cool little role. And I mean, he was in the 2005 King Kong movie, so it would have been cool to see him be one of the main characters of a movie with Godzilla and Kong in it. But that's okay.
Hopefully, Mr. Chandler, we will see you down the road in more MonsterVerse films.
I'd be all for bringing him back. I'd be all for bringing him back. Even if Millie Bobby Brown doesn't necessarily come back, I'd love to maybe find a way to bring Mark back.
Yeah, I will say as a character, I think I liked her more in King of the Monsters as a side plot rather than, kind of out in front and center in this film.
Huh. That's interesting, because if you would have asked me, and again, I don't have like math or data to back this up, but it feels like she's less the center of it in this one. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I know she's not the main character in King of the Monsters, but it feels like she's so like at the core, at the center of it, of a lot of things, like revolving around her. And this one, she feels like she's like in the B plot. Like, the A plot is the Kong characters, and the B plot's kind of like the gang trying to figure out what's up with Godzilla. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I could say that I liked her character better in King of the Monsters then. That's the way I should have put
Okay.
that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'll move into my favorite score or soundtrack for the film, and coming off of King of the Monsters and Bear McCreary, that one just being such a hit, just banger after banger, and hit soundtrack after soundtrack. I will say that I did not have a lot of love for the Godzilla theme in this film, or the specific Kong theme they did. But one track I got into, and when it gets on when I'm watching it, I crank it up on the TV, is the main titles. The main titles are absolutely my favorite from this film.
Finding the origin of these creatures is essential to mankind's survival.
The interior of the Earth is made up of vast caverns and air pockets, joined by natural avenues.
The Admiral begins his expedition, searching for an entrance to a hidden world.
The purpose is the discovery and the release to the world of the unknown treasures of Antarctica in the interest of all mankind.
Members of the Lost Party were never seen again. Still no word on what may have happened.
For me, I would say I actually like Hong Kong. I like Mega and I like Hong Kong, but Hong Kong is my favorite track. I really like Kong's overall theme in this. Like I love the music for this a lot more than most people do. It's different from King of the Monsters, but I do think it does a good job of making its own identity for these characters. And for me, Hong Kong is the track that's the best. Yeah, that's the music that plays during the big finale, like the last 13 minutes of the movie. Essentially, it's Godzilla and Kong against Mechagodzilla. It's the whole 13-minute track. Like that's an epic for me, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not ripping on this soundtrack at all. I like the tracks. They're different. They have like an ominous dark tone to them. But I when it comes to my favorite, I like the main titles because it's in your face, it's loud, and then the cut scenes in the background that kind of show like Ghidorah being defeated and Kong defeating the skull crawler and like almost like showing like a quick briefing of like how we got to this point where they're the two left, Godzilla versus Kong.
Oh,
It
oh yeah,
is phenomenal.
yeah. The main title sequence in general, it's like I love that the MonsterVerse does this. I know that we've talked about it before that opening credit sequences are kind of like passe these days, and they're not really done very often. But I love that the MonsterVerse does them. So like I think it's exceptional. I love seeing it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I'll go into favorite quote and let you take the reins on this one.
Okay. So, favorite quote, actually not a spoken line of dialogue. It's actually a signed line of dialogue from Gia. And it's near the end of the film where she says, Godzilla, not enemy. That is enemy. It's true. Please be careful. The way that she is breaking down in tears as she says that line, it's like, I don't know, it's like gut wrenching to me. I don't know. Like, kids, like she's just a great actress and a great character, and like this kid is so invested in the story, and you can just kind of empathize with her, and she just delivers it like so earnestly, and it's like it's such a good wholesome moment of just trying to convince King Kong to go help Godzilla, and I just love that scene so much. Like I don't know, I just like it a lot.
Yeah, that might every time I watch the film and even in theaters, that might caught a little tear in my eye for me. It just Godzilla not enemy and her telling him to be careful and stuff. That was phenomenal, and I did not think of using that, so I'm absolutely glad you brought that up because that whole little scene there where they kind of bring Kong back to life, you could say, is a phenomenal part of the film.
Yeah, and it's plus at that point in the movie, it's absolutely what the fans want. Mechagodzilla is kicking the crap out of Godzilla, and you kind of just want Kong to be convinced that helping Godzilla is the right thing to do after Godzilla just basically killed him. So it's just a good moment. Like the audience is on the side of the movie at that moment, and that's what you want.
Yeah. I ended up going with mine was kind of like a back and forth in the beginning where the dialogue was stated they're talking about moving Kong off of Skull Island and she says offsite would be a death sentence. And he goes, "You don't think the king can take care of himself?" And the doctor goes, "There has to be another way." And it cuts right into the opening credits. And that kind of gives you like a chill, like, ooh, like they know Godzilla's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I do love that they one thing that this movie does a great job at is that even when even though Kong's got quite a bit more screen time and sort of story focus, is that so much of the decisions of the characters and the movements of the plot are entirely influenced by Godzilla. Like everything they do with Kong is influenced around keeping him away from Godzilla. The entire existence of Mechagodzilla is there because of Godzilla. Like the it's not just about the math of like, oh well, Kong has more scenes and screen time, so this movie's much more about Kong. It's like, yeah, but what the movie is about isn't necessarily who's on screen the most. Like it's really kind of centered around Godzilla in a lot of ways that people don't really give credit to.
Yeah, and then there was another one that I had thought of, kind of like an honorable mention. Like these were both Dr. Andrews, and I believe she was speaking with. I don't know if he was like an army like colonel or if he was like an admiral on the ship. Um, he goes, "So if they meet again, who bows to who? Is that it?" And Dr. Andrews replies, "No, I spent 10 years on that island studying him, and I know this for sure. Kong bows to no one." And that just like gets you ready for the fight
Yeah.
coming, you know. And in theaters, I looked to my daughter's mom and I was like, he's about to learn today.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's so fun, like this is just a good old fashioned kind of monster mash of a movie, and we don't get enough movies that are content with being that these days. Not everything has to be some, ultra like I could love a complex movie with a lot going on as well, but man, just a good old fashioned monster fighting movie, you gotta love them.
Yeah, I mean, it takes itself as serious as it can for
As
being
it
what it is.
as serious as it needs to, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'll have you go into your favorite scene of the film, and if you want to call out some honorable mentions like I do, kind of cheating in a little way, feel free.
Yeah, sure. So the hands down favorite scene has to be Godzilla versus Kong in Hong Kong. So sort of the second, they have their first battle at sea and then their second battle in Hong Kong. And like that's it because the first battle is kind of at sea and Kong doesn't have his weapon and Godzilla's in the water. That's his element. Like that Godzilla is very much gonna kind of get the better end of that battle and it's gonna be unresolved because it's kind of the first third or middle of the movie. But when it's in Hong Kong and Kong has his axe and Godzilla's there and there's really no one interrupting, like that's like the real fight. And that's the one where I'm like, all right, like Godzilla kind of like you're rooting the hardest for Godzilla and you want Godzilla to win. So like I've never been on the edge of my seat so much during a monster fight in a movie because almost always that's the good monster is going to defeat the evil monster, but in something like this it's like, well, one of them is going to win. It's just a matter of exactly how it plays out. So like it's such an intense scene and I badly wanted Godzilla to win. I've watched King Kong versus Godzilla since I was a kid, so it's a lifelong dream of like, can Godzilla win this one? Can he beat Kong? Can it finally happen? And to see it happen, when he dislocates his shoulder and flings him across, I leaned to my brother. I'm like, it's over. He's got him. I was like, I know it. It was like it's just satisfying to see. Like seeing that in a theater, packed theater, opening night, like you can't really top it. It was just like an all timer moment.
Yeah, and he even gets a little brutal, biting him and scratching him and them showing the scratches and stuff. I was like, "Ugh," like
Oh yeah,
he's not
yeah. He
holding
went.
back on this one.
Yeah, he went savage on him. It was great.
And that leads into what my favorite scene is. Of course, I love all the fight scenes, but I chose a specific spot where Godzilla's got Kong down. He steps on him. Kong punches him in the leg where he stabbed him with the axe. Godzilla lets out, looks towards the sky, lets out a roar. and then he just steps on him again with like all the force you can imagine, and kind of turns and twists his foot and just gives Kong that stare down, like, listen here, like, I'm alpha, you're gonna understand this. Like, pretty much saying, like, I can kill you right now. And they roar at each other, almost like, and Godzilla kind of like drops back and nods to him, almost in like showing Kong respect. Like, I'm the alpha, but I'm not gonna kill you. Like, I could, just know that. And that
Yeah.
just, every time I see that, when I watch that film of Godzilla just giving him a mean mug and coming down and getting in his face, it gives me a little chill and a little smile of happiness. Like, yup, let him know.
Yeah. There's a scene in a movie called Pitch Black with Vin Diesel where he pulls a gun on another character, and then he has the option to shoot him and he doesn't, and he kind of brings it back with this line of dialogue. He's like, I want you to remember this moment the way it could have gone and didn't. And every time I see Godzilla kind of let up on Kong and like not just like blast him in the face and kill him, I always think of that line from Pitch Black where he's just like, I want you to remember this moment, how it could have gone and didn't, like he's like, I'm not gonna end you, even though Godzilla also probably got the sense of like, hey, he's down and out, like he's fighting to the end, but this is a death sentence. You see Kong try to get up and he collapses back. If they hadn't revived him, Kong would have been just dead on the floor there. So I mean, Godzilla knew what the score was.
There's a couple other scenes I wanted to bring up, which of course was the fight with Mechagodzilla, which, here's where I'll go into my little rant about that. Is I wish they would have done it a little bit differently, to where, you clearly had the Ghidorah head. You got Ren Sarazawa. He's kind of piloting him, I guess you could say. And I wish they would have done, like, in my mind, how I would have done it is where Godzilla and them, Mechagodzilla comes out, he's piloting him, and Godzilla's kind of getting the better of him, kind of beating him, giving him a little ass kicking. It's still kind of like an even fight, but Godzilla's getting the upper hand. And then after a couple minutes, that's when Ghidorah's like kind of takes over, I guess you could say, and then
Okay.
just starts giving Godzilla the ass whooping of his life.
Okay, fair enough. So instead of Ghidorah taking over like right off the bat, it's more saved to later.
Yeah, kind of Godzilla, like I said, gets the upper hand, thinks,
Yeah.
it's gonna be another victory for him, and the fans are like, yeah, 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 and then King Ghidorah just flips the script, and Mechagodzilla just starts raising hell, and that's when I would have done like the beam battle where
Okay.
Mechagodzilla just destroys Godzilla's heat ray and whatnot,
Yeah,
and
that's
then I would
interesting.
have.
Because then it could have been a little more like how when Kiryu when you had Kiryu in the older films, and at first it was piloted, but then it would sort of take over and do its own thing. That would have been interesting. I Yeah, people talk about like, oh, they would have liked to see Godzilla do better at first, but the justification of the director was that after blasting the hole to the center of the earth and having the fight with Kong, that by that point Godzilla's at about like half power. So he's at a disadvantage when Mechagodzilla shows up. It's like, I don't like seeing him immediately kind of get stomped either. But I mean, it also was a machine designed specifically to kill Godzilla, and it's being controlled by the soul of Godzilla's arch nemesis. So I kind of like I'm okay with the narrative of Godzilla kind of getting curb stomped in that fight.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I love it for what it is, and I love that the director, whatever Mecha Godzilla threw at him, Godzilla got up, and he just never stayed down until it
Exactly.
was that last little second where Kong comes in and saves him, but he kept getting back up and giving it his all, even after fighting Kong and drilling the Hollow Earth, like you said, and he's got to be wore out. He probably went 12 rounds, 15 rounds.
Yeah, Godzilla's got max durability, but even then he can only take so much.
I will say I had a favorite scene in the or a little portion of the fight with Mechagodzilla. and that's when Godzilla charges up his atomic breath and just lets loose on Kong's axe, powering it up. That scene and that like CGI and how good it looks will forever be like burned into my brain and my memory.
Oh, it's such a like now's your chance kind of a moment, you know, like Godzilla sees what's going on and it's like like he could have blasted Mechagodzilla and that maybe wouldn't have done any good at all, but it's like well he knows that what Kong's axe can do when it's charged. So it's like Godzilla making a strategic move and an intelligent decision to power the axe and the great thing is like when Kong sees it, like my favorite maybe CGI moment in the movie is Kong's realization when he sees the axe charged, and then he just rah, just like goes all in on attacking because he knows it's his chance to, and then you immediately cut to the human characters and they're all cheering. And I could tell you that like in the theater, like everyone in the crowd was cheering too. You know, it was great.
Yeah, that's just I mean, the last from the time they get to Hong Kong in this film, it's like an hour and 22 minutes in or something like that. For that last half hour, 25 minutes, this film just kicks ass and goes hard all the way.
Yeah, the third act of this movie, from the moment that Godzilla arrives in Hong Kong and then blows the hole to the Hollow Earth, and like from that moment to the end of the movie, it's just cinema. Like it's just like excellent, just firing on all cylinders, checking all the boxes, doing everything you want to see.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you what at the end of the film when Godzilla kind of comes up to Kong and like gives him like a little nod to the side, and Kong looks at his axe and drops it, and Godzilla gives him a roar. What did you take that as? Did you take that as kind of like a sign of respect, or him kind of not quite bowing but like submitting to Godzilla, or how did you look at that?
Yeah, you can kind of see it a few different ways. You know, like Godzilla's there, and he kind of seems like if he must, he'd be ready to go another round. You know, like he's like I think he's kind of testing it. Like you've got the axe. Like, is this going to be a problem? Are we going to have an issue here? And Kong's like, Kong's clearly on his last legs. You know, and I think he's just like, look, like it's not like Kong's kind of the more aware and intelligent one, and so he's kind of making the more like maybe a moral decision, like it's not worth fighting, it's not worth it, like he beat me, he got me, like I'm not about to fight or challenge anymore. So like dropping the axe is like a way of sort of showing a little bit of subservience, and that's enough for Godzilla to say like, hey, okay, like we did this together, but like we're not about to fight anymore and we're just going to let bygones be bygones, you know.
I also think Kong saw the axe was it was running out of power because as soon as he dropped it, it wasn't lit
Yeah.
up anymore with any more power. So he's like you
Yeah.
said, he kind of was just like, all right, like we battled, I lost, we kind of saved each other. Like let's go our separate
Yeah,
ways, and
yeah,
we're not going to be friends, but
yeah, let's consider the score settled, and like let's just leave it be. Like I won't start anything if you don't start anything, kind of a perspective.
yep, I like that. I like that. Just
And
wanted to get
no,
your
no,
thoughts on that.
the bias thing is Godzilla walked up and said, "Drop it, or I'm gonna destroy you." And Kong was like, "Okay, I'm gonna drop it because I don't want to get killed." That's the bias way of looking at it.
You never
God,
know. We
Godzilla is like, "Don't make me beat your ass again."
Oh, what do you think? Should we go into some monster design?
I mean, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We could. I mean, not a ton to talk about, but yeah, we could go into it.
Nope, Godzilla's pretty much the awesome top G tier, as Chris would say in this film.
I
In my
do.
mind, I love it.
Yeah, I do love that they continue to lean into and play up his bioluminescence. You know, it
Yes.
seems like after his his charge up in King of the Monsters, and then having the going like fire Godzilla and having the nuclear pulse, that it seems that they just kind of lean into this idea that he's just sort of like fueled by this atomic energy and this bioluminescence that just and like it just peels through and breaks through his flesh and his eyes and his skin when he's getting like overpowered. It just gives this sense of like powering up, like an anime character or something. And it just makes for really, really dynamic visuals. And so I love to see it.
It does, absolutely. I love that they continue with the intimidation display and everything of that sort. I love getting the close ups on Godzilla's face. It just looks really like gritty and gnarly, and he,
Yeah, there are some monster close-ups in here where the CGI is just excellent, like really excellent.
yeah, it almost leaves me at a loss for words watching it because, like I said, when we get a close up on Godzilla's face, I'm all in. Like I'm watching Saturday morning cartoons, when I was 7 years old or something.
Exactly, exactly.
Kong, I appreciate him as well. I think this is the best look we've seen of Kong in any of his films. I think it's much improved from Kong Skull Island. His beard, I guess you could call it, is a little bigger. It's a little more gray. He's aging in these films like fine wine.
Yeah, I like I like the Skull Island look because it was more of a sort of Toho Kong look, the sort of going from just being a silverback gorilla in the Peter Jackson movie, which is fine, I guess, to actually truly being a monster, like a kaiju, a titan, And but I do like the the push and the move here to kind of go a little bit more traditional gorilla sometimes with the way Kong is standing more gorilla style instead of just straight up, like less of a like Skull Island was like more of a yeti creature, more of a sort of unique thing, which I loved a lot, but then this gets to be a bit more of a middle ground where he has like the upright style but is also a bit more of a of a of a classic gorilla monster, which is good. It's a line to walk between how much is Kong a gorilla, how much is he a unique creature that just looks kind of like a gorilla, and I like the idea that maybe as Kong ages, that just like humans and other animals and whatnot, kind of like change and grow differently and their proportions alter. That's just something that happens with Kong's species as it gets older, that it becomes a bit more classic gorilla.
All right, I'll what did you think of the war bats? I actually like their kind of flying design, and I like the scene with them fighting Kong because I if the humans weren't there, that might have been the end of Kong in this film early on.
Oh, the giant snake ones. Yeah. I liked seeing those. They felt a little bit like something out of like oh gosh, there's an old movie, 2007 2008 movie called Dragon Wars or D War. People might know it, and like they kind of reminded me of like the main creature, the main sort of dragon serpent creature from that movie. But yeah, real unique design, and I kind of took it. It was fun because my younger brother kind of took it. He's like Kong's getting like XP points, like he lost the first round of Godzilla. Now he's like taking on other monsters and finding equipment to kind of like gear himself up for the next battle to kind of like, you know, increase his power level, so to speak. It was fun.
Yeah, I absolutely like the way they look. The wings, the long tail. They were a nice original monster, something different, and the way they entered the screen, by attacking and blowing up one of the heaves in theaters, you're like, holy hell, what was that? And then
Yeah.
you see these things, and it's like, damn, this is kind of cool. Like, what the hell is this? And then you find out I believe their name was like a war bat or something of that sort.
Yeah, and as much as like all the favorite scenes, we praise the fight scenes, but like the sequence where they reveal Hollow Earth is like absolutely exceptional. When you're in the Hollow Earth with Kong and you're just going through the landscape, like it's so, the Hollow Earth wasn't invented by the monster verse. It's an old sci-fi kind of concept, but it's so unique to see explored on film in this way that I'll never forget seeing it for the first time. It just felt so surreal and so kind of otherworldly. Like I'm not here to put this movie on a level of like a oh, Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or whatever. But seeing the Hollow Earth executed the way it was, it did feel, it was like such a cinematic moment. It was like such an all time kind of a reveal moment for me, and I was like, man, if this wasn't in the lockdowns and wasn't on streaming at the same time, and this was like a theater only movie, I just felt like it would have been such a phenomenon, to for everyone to see it that way on the big screen.
Yeah, I mean, seeing it in IMAX is definitely way different than coming home. You said you have like a 100 or 120-inch projector. I have a 70-inch TV, but no matter what you got, it's just not the same as seeing a film like this in IMAX.
Yeah, 100%.
How about we dig into Mechagodzilla? Because I am honestly a big fan of this design.
Yeah, I like the design. I don't. Okay, that even sounded more negative than I wanted to. It's not necessarily my favorite Mechagodzilla design. I do like it a lot. I like the sort of functional militaristic look to it. The sort of, it's a little kind of like not clunky, but kind of like rigid in a way that you can kind of believe that it's sort of human made. And it's just that the silhouette doesn't feel quite distinctly Mechagodzilla at some moments. The proportions are just a little odd, but generally speaking, like, I think it's like a 9 out of 10 design for Mechagodzilla. I do love it, and it grows on me the more I watch the movie.
Yeah, I like the hands, the twisting hands. It's got a short tail, and it just how quick and like how fast it can maneuver. It's so agile, and it's large too. It in some of the scenes, I know they say that it's like the official height. It's barely taller than Godzilla, but in some of the scenes, how they're directed, it looks massive standing next to him. And then when it goes to fly and like just absolutely pulverize Godzilla with like a right hand, it
Yeah,
its spines do almost like the Godzilla -1, but instead of popping out, they kind of tilt their way up a little bit and click into place before it like jumps and flies and knocks Godzilla to the ground.
yeah,
That's kind of what it reminds me of.
yeah, and I like the idea of it that it was sort of meant to be a sort of human-made kind of answer or counteractive to Godzilla, and so something that's sort of aesthetic, like you know, the tail maybe doesn't get quite, I mean, they turn it into like the spinning attack weapon. So, but like they would they would look at Godzilla and they would see like, oh well, his arms maybe aren't as huge or big or crazy. So like our Mecha Godzilla needs to have these big, powerful arms. Like the Mecha Godzilla is designed to be kind of top heavy because it's like meant to be something that can combat and grapple Godzilla. So naturally you would think that design wise they would want to make it strong where Godzilla might be not as strong. So like it makes sense that it's not just like, oh, a robot version of exactly Godzilla's proportions. Like, no, it's meant to be something that is like a mechanical superior to Godzilla. So like they're trying to like improve on the ways that they think they can make Godzilla better as a robot kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I absolutely cheer and love the Mechagodzilla in this film. And it's, I can't wait to see what else Legendary has in store. It's
Yeah,
hopefully
what they're cooking. Yeah, yeah.
they got to be coming up with something because these films they're getting wild, and hopefully they keep doing well.
Yeah, and I mean, and yeah, and I mean, there's already rumors and discussions for whatever the next movie after Godzilla Kong: The New Empire might be. So I mean, you know,
100%. All right, how about we go into our tier rating for the four?
the four MonsterVerse movies. Yeah, yeah, we'll count
The
Kong. That's
four?
fine. We didn't do an episode on Kong, but we can count Kong. That's perfectly fine.
All right, what do you got?
All right, so I mean, I've got just barely. I do have Kong Skull Island at the bottom. I have Godzilla 2014 just above it. I've got King of the Monsters #2, and despite all of the things I specifically love about King of the Monsters, overall, I have Godzilla versus Kong at the top. That's just how it is.
All right. And anyone listening, don't worry. We will get to an episode on Kong Skull Island when we do the King Kong franchise that is on the way and will be in the works. But I have Godzilla 2014 at the bottom of these four as much as I like and appreciate that film. And, you know, it was the reboot that brought us into the MonsterVerse. But my third film, Kong Skull Island, I enjoy that a little more. And once we get to that episode, everyone will understand why. Two, I have Godzilla versus Kong. And then at the top spot, I have Godzilla King of the Monsters from this legendary franchise.
Yeah, good spot. Good choice. Good choice. Not gonna argue with that.
Is there anything else we wanted to dive into on Godzilla vs. Kong before we get out of here?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, movies like this, when you love everything about the movie, it's we've talked about it before that you have less to talk about because you just say that everything's great. I thought that this was finally legendary, kind of hitting its stride in terms of the kind of monster movies the MonsterVerse needed to be. I think that Godzilla was maybe trying a bit too hard to be a kind of disaster movie, kind of like traditional sort of, you know, blockbuster. I thought that Kong Skull Island was a fun like island adventure, but you can kind of only do a one-off island adventure once. That's not really part of the world at large. King of the Monsters was this sort of, again, kind of playing by these like, oh, global disaster movie kind of rules. Transformers, Independence Day, 2012, like this kind of like we got to have a lot of characters and it's got to be big and large in scope. And this was the movie where they kind of were like no, like focus on the handful of characters that you need. Focus on the monsters. Treat the monsters like they're leading characters in the movie. Don't just treat them as plot devices. Give the monsters their own kind of little character arcs to go on and their own journeys, and tell a sort of quick and effective kind of story, and make it efficient, and don't waste any time overstuffing it with stuff that doesn't need to be there. And so I feel like this was kind of where they kind of like perfected the formula. And so it only makes me that much more excited to see where they go with Godzilla Kong the New Empire.
Absolutely. And I mean, I one thing I forgot to mention was the novelization for this film. I've talked through these episodes about reading the novelizations for the MonsterVerse, and this one's no different. If you're a reader and you like Godzilla, read the novelizations. I wasn't a reader, and I still read them just because I wanted to see, the detail and whatnot. And this is a great novelization as well. And I love the film, read the book. We're still waiting for that video game that these legendary films are going to lead to down the road. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing that because this movie transformed a lot kind of in the editing room and in the post production, and I understand that the novel has a lot, gives like Rin Sarazawa a lot more to do, and just kind of like that it just kind of delves into the characters and the sort of mechanizations of them a lot more.
Yeah, the beginning of it explains the storm taking over Skull Island and like the Iwi people losing their lives and whatnot. And that's like the first chapter or chapter and a half, and it's a nice little like gap fill in. But that's all I have on Godzilla vs. Kong. Final thoughts. Phenomenal movie. If you haven't seen it, definitely get out there and watch it. It's without credits. I think the movie's like an hour and 45, 46 minutes. I mean, it's very fast paced. I mean, you see Kong almost immediately when the film starts. Godzilla's first appearance is about 10 minutes in, and once it gets going, it doesn't let up.
Yeah, it is sort of in terms of the modern era, in the way that we would say like, oh, Godzilla 2000 was like a perfect sort of gateway drug into giant monster movies because it's so kind of well handled overall, or or GMK, or or whatever movie. Like for this generation, like if you've got like a younger kid, like this is the movie you kind of can turn them into an overnight monster fan with. And this is just like a nice, easy even if though there's 3 movies that precede it, it's not like there's some intricate, in-depth plot that you have to understand or grasp. It's not like hyper complicated with lore or whatnot. Like if you're just in for a monster movie, Godzilla versus Kong is a great jumping in point for the franchise, and it's like watching the first Avengers movie. It's like you knew there were movies before, but plenty of people just went into that movie and could kind of get it. They know who an Iron Man is, they know what a Hulk is, they can understand Captain America and Thor, and they just jump in at the first Avengers movie, and then you're on board for the whole franchise. It's like this works very much in that same way. It's a sequel, but it's kind of weirdly a standalone story too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a fun and phenomenal film all around. And next week we're gonna get into another good one. Godzilla vs. Kong was followed by Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire, which was released March 29th, 2024. But that is not the next film we'll be diving into, as in we are going off release date order on these films. And the one that followed this release date was Godzilla Minus One, which was released November 3rd, 2023. So that is the next film we will be covering, and that should be a fun one. Seen that one in theaters twice, had a blast both times.
Yeah, I think I went through 3 or 4 times for Minus One. I think there was IMAX, and then I went to Screen X, and then took my younger brother to a regular show, and then I saw it in with Minus Color. So yeah, 4 times.
I did not get to see Minus Color, so hopefully that will be on the Blu-ray. Whatever we happen to get of it over here, hopefully that'll be a version on there.
Yeah, spoiler alert, it was black and white.
Well, Chris, on Godzilla vs. Kong, joining me for another episode, 36 of them. I appreciate it, and I'd like to say thank you for joining me. And I know you have a fun with these as well.
Yeah. Sorry. Happy to be here. Yeah, it's always a good time. Looking forward to more.
Absolutely, man. Not a problem. Always fun diving into something you love to talk about. And next week, again, we are doing Godzilla Minus One. So again, thanks for joining me. But until next time.
Finding the origin of these creatures is essential to mankind's survival.
The interior of the Earth is made up of vast caverns and air pockets, joined by natural avenues.
The Admiral begins his expedition, searching for an entrance to a hidden world.
The purpose is the discovery and the release to the world of the unknown treasures of Antarctica in the interest of all mankind.
Members of the Lost Party were never seen again. Still no word on what may have happened.
There's an ecosystem out there, the likes of which we can't imagine. And the place to find it is this island.